week of, there you go. The recording has started, just so you know. Green Infrastructure Week is about insight and commentary over this week to focus on the technologies and innovations we need to develop and deploy in order to be able to execute the transition to clean energy and to hit net zero by 2050, which is obviously a massive undertaking. This event, hosted by the Nuclear Industry Association, which is called Financing Nuclear, Unlocking Barriers to Development, is part of that, but you can see the whole program and see many more issues addressed and debated if you go to greeninfrastructureweek.com, and there'll be a whole series of technologies and issues which will get discussed as part of the week as it goes along. Just as an introduction, for those of you who are curious about the landscape, we have seen a very pronounced shift in sentiment about people realizing the importance of nuclear to a successful clean energy transition and to energy security for those countries which deploy it. Nuclear as a technology is in fact the lowest carbon. It uses the least land and actually uses the least amount of mining and materials in order to deliver clean energy. And those strong benefits are coming through, and you may have seen from the UK context, the British Energy Security Strategy put nuclear right at the heart of delivering clean, sovereign energy for this country in the decades as we go forward. What we've seen historically in the nuclear industry is that it is not the technology so much as the financing of large infrastructure projects with some years of construction that then have decades of operation. That financing that structure of a project has proved a challenge, although nuclear itself is very low cost in operation, and in fact one of the most competitive and cheapest sources over the long run. And these are assets, again, that we're talking about lasting 50, 60 years and even beyond that. So today we will hear from Julia Pyke from Sizewell C. We will hear from Sophie Macfarlane-Smith from Rolls-Royce. We hear from Mike Waite from Westinghouse and Chris White from U Battery, which so Westinghouse and Sizewell C will both be looking at gigawatt scale reactors and how we develop and finance those. Rolls-Royce is developing a light water small modular reactor, and then U Battery is looking at a generation 4 advanced modular reactors. So an exciting range of technologies that people are looking towards. We will hear first from Julia, then go to Sophie and Mike and Chris. And now, if we can have the presentation up on the screen, I will hand over to Julia Pyke from Sizewell C.
Thanks, Lincoln. So I'm going to talk very briefly so that we leave plenty of time for questions. So why are we talking about nuclear as green? As Lincoln said, there's been an increasing realization as focus grows on how do you actually make a green electricity system, and there's been much more focus on the system as a whole than on individual components of the system. And obviously there's now a heavy focus on energy security, which is sort of separate from the question, is it green? So why do we believe that nuclear is an essential part of a green energy system? As Lincoln said, it's the lowest carbon way of making electricity to an industrial scale. The life cycle carbon assessment, which we've done for Sizewell C, which was done by an independent consultancy and verified by a second independent engineering consultancy, came out at around 5.5 grams per kilowatt hour, which I think is roughly half the amount attributed to the next lowest form of electricity by the IPCC. And it's a very granular assessment. It includes things like how many litres of diesel will you burn in bringing materials in by lorry, for example. Then the challenges to whether or not it's green tend to come in the form of challenges about nuclear waste, whether or not it's safe, how much of it there is. And in response to the concerns about waste, there's been a lot of better communication more recently around the nature of nuclear waste and around its very small volume. So we've just made actually, I say it myself, a really good short clip of somebody touching the canisters which have the Sizewell C waste in and the Sizewell B waste, sorry, and you can see from looking at a canister what what is the amount of waste which has been given rise to from creating electricity for 3% of the nation's needs over an 18-month period? And you can see the volume there. And I think as probably most people on this call know, your lifetime's electricity needs, if met from nuclear, would use uranium, which would fit into a Coke can. And at the end of your life, the waste resulting from your lifetime's use of nuclear electricity would fit back into that same Coke can. So it's volumetrically small. It's very safely stored, shielded very effectively. And it is something which I think has sort of seized public imagination to a degree because of programs like The Simpsons, which are great, but not documentaries on the safety of nuclear electricity generation. I think safety is the next question which people tend to raise, and I think is, again, for most people on this call, well known that the chances of release of radioactivity from a UK EPR, so what we're building at Hinkley and what we're building at Sizewell C, is around about the same as a meteorite taking you off this earth. So it's super safe. And then cost, and this is what we're really going to talk to you about financing. So the cost of financing nuclear under contract for difference has obviously proved quite high because of the very long construction period, making nuclear not that suitable for contracts for difference. And so the government's thought again, and the government has introduced the regulated asset-based model, and the legislation is now in place. And it was put in place with cross-party support. So I think there was pretty much unanimity across the Conservative and Labour benches in support of the introduction of the RAB model. And the reason that we're showing you this picture here is because very important to financing is confidence in the technology, but also confidence in the political landscape. And you can see here the Prime Minister visiting Hinkley a couple of weeks ago, and you can see Kwasi Kwarteng visiting the site of Sizewell C, and in the background you can see Sizewell B, which until Hinkley comes online, will, together with the new Hinkley, be the only one of the current fleet of UK nuclear power stations operating beyond 2030. So to embed nuclear as green and eligible for green finance, it's obviously very important to us that the government includes it in the taxonomy. And if we look at the green bond issued by Bruce Power recently for its refurbishments to its nuclear plants, we can see that that was 6 times oversubscribed, and shows that there is indeed a very healthy appetite for green bonds featuring nuclear power. So the RAB, and why will it bring down costs? I can't actually remember what's on my next slide, but if we have a look at it, then there you go. So yes, so just very roughly, where are we? We are expecting the Secretary of State to announce the outcome of our lengthy development consent order process during Q2 this year, so shortly. The legislation has created the regulated asset-based model. We are expecting in the next couple of months to have most of our other permits in place, and we are well on the way to achieving a nuclear site license. And then we are looking to take financial close during next year, probably towards the end of Q2. So back to the RAB model, why does it bring costs down, and how much does it bring costs down? So the first thing to say is that people have often think about, or certainly talk about, nuclear as being expensive. And of course, if you're going to build an awful lot of generating capacity in one spot, then it's expensive. But what the relevant measure for the cost of nuclear isn't really the capital cost, and it's not really the individual cost of the power station. Those both obviously need to be minimised, but really it's the impact on household bills. So our modelling shows that building Sizewell will bring household bills down once the power station turns on by somewhere in a conservative range of between £20 and £40 per year. And the more nuclear you build, up to around about the level that the government has put into the nuclear programme, the lower household bills get. And when people wonder why is this, given that nuclear is at a generating a megawatt level more expensive than wind, it's because your electricity bill is made up of not only the cost of generation, but also the cost of transmission and the costs of making sure that there is electricity available in throughout the year, whatever the weather conditions. And the cost of the system resulting in your electricity bill per household is lowered by nuclear. And that is the basic case for nuclear bringing down costs for consumers as we decarbonise. And the regulated asset base brings down costs further, because whereas Hinkley under contract for difference doesn't earn any money and racks up interest for all the years of construction, and then if you think about paying off your own credit card bill, but leaving it for the better part of 20 years to do so, then that's an expensive business. And what the regulated asset base model does is it takes the same system, which is already used for electricity transmission and distribution and for water assets and for airports, and simply applies that same system to nuclear. And it therefore pays interest on debt as you go along and pays a small yield in construction. What does this mean for household bills? Because you are paying off debt during the construction period. It means that during this Parliament, the annual household electricity bill will pay around about £2 per household per year. And during the height of construction, then it will go up to around about £1 per month per household. And then when Sizewell C turns on, then household bills will be lower by a range of, as I said, between conservatively £20 and £40 per household per year. So the regulated asset-based model not only prevents the build-up of large interest payment, but it also enables us, because it produces a long-term stable CPI-linked income stream, it enables us to attract low-cost capital. And so the government's own figures are that by using the RAB model, there'll be a £30 billion saving for each nuclear project that we do. So we've been spending a lot of time talking to the financial community and talking to the rating agencies and getting in place all of the building blocks necessary for us to start the process of raising the money for Sizewell in a few months' time, once, as I said, we've got these major consents in place. I don't know if I have another slide or whether that was the totality. My next slide was thank you. So I'm going to stop there to leave plenty of time for questions and to hear from Sophie, Mike and Chris.
Well, thank you very much, Julia, for that. And now I will hand over without further ado to Sophie Macfarlane-Smith from Rolls-Royce. Take it away, Sophie.
Thank you, Lincoln, and hello everyone, and good afternoon, and thank you for having me to join you at the Green Infrastructure Week. So I'm going to talk about a different approach to delivering nuclear, moving away from nuclear as a large infrastructure project to nuclear as a small modular reactor. So I am from Rolls-Royce SMR Limited, and we are taking a different approach to the deployment of nuclear power going forward. We're looking at deploying a reactor, a nuclear plant that's 470 megawatts, and delivering it in a really different way, which means that we move away from a large infrastructure project and we move to a more commodity product, a manufactured factory manufactured approach to delivering nuclear. So if I can go to my next slide, please. So when we look at this, and when I came to pull this presentation together, I thought, okay, well, how do we explain what it is that we're doing relating to what investors want and how we make our plant more investable as a nuclear solution for the market. So I just went and looked at, okay, what do investors want? What do investors look for when they're looking for a project to invest in? And this is ensuring that we can go to standard investment funds available on the market today. So the investors are looking for a large market. Now, we all know that nuclear is a great low carbon product. It supports energy security. It delivers dispatchable low carbon power. Additionally, both large and small nuclear support grid electricity, but also industrial applications. And particularly smaller nuclear plants like the Rolls-Royce SMR are suitable for replacement coal-fired power stations, both in the UK and overseas, but also to, if we could go back, also to cover industrial applications where they're looking to decarbonise. Again, the Rolls-Royce SMR is designed to maximise the site flexibility, so the plant itself is designed to be able to be deployed to as many sites as possible, and we're looking at a standardized repeatable design with an investable capex around 2 billion total plant cost for the power station per plant, and a levelized cost of electricity which is commensurate with other low carbon power. So again, we're looking at an investment that is suitable for the current market. Another thing investors look for is a strong management team. So within Rolls-Royce SMR Limited, we've got 60+ years worth of nuclear experience coming from Rolls-Royce. We've got 100+ years of manufacturing experience from Rolls-Royce Group. We've got a very strong operator experience and credibility coming from our partners, Constellation in the US, who are one of our investors. We've got strong construction experience from our partner organisations, and most importantly, all of that experience is embedded in the design in these early stages to make sure that our plant that we've designed, the complete power station, is not just operable, but it's also manufacturable, and we can have confidence in how we're going to construct it. So all of that experience is put in up front. And then really critically is delivery certainty. As Julia mentioned, what investors are looking for is certainty. They want certainty that the plants and projects will be delivered as required and on time. So the investment that they make is only tied up for the period of time in which they've agreed they will make that investment, and they begin to get their return within a period that they can trust. And we have looked to change the way that nuclear plants and nuclear projects are delivered by creating a factory fabricated solution. So 90% of our overall plant is factory fabricated, and this is against the full plant and not just the nuclear island. We've got full plant modularization, so the entire power station, not just the nuclear island, is modularized. And we have very low risk of expensive plant redesign and rejustification when we take that design and transfer it to different sites. We've standardized manufacture and assembly, and we're using a digital twin across the full design, both for the design of the plant and also the design of our factories and for our assembly process. And we've got a turnkey plant contract delivered by a single team, the same team that will be used for delivering all of the plants. So we have a repeatable solution, a factory fabricated solution, and a solution that we know can deliver certainty during the important manufacture and construction phase, and deliver the certainty that investors need to be able to invest. And then most importantly for nuclear, again, we've got low licensing risk. We're talking about using proven PWR technology, existing fuel. We've designed the entire plant to meet global licensing requirements, not just the requirements of a single location. And we have specific design features like the aseismic bearing, which maximize our site flexibility. So all of those deliver up to what investors really want, which is of course a return, a secure return on their investment. Can we go to the next slide, please? I just want to focus specifically on the approach that we're taking for SMRs to make this a new type of product for the market. So as I mentioned, we're turning nuclear into a product and not a one-off mega infrastructure projects. Again, absolutely right that we continue with large nuclear, but we're looking to do something different. We're looking to reduce the risk associated with the mega projects, which do deliver a high volume of electricity but are longer term, and we're producing something that is designed specifically for the market, for low carbon power, for flexibility, and for multi-use applications, and also to be investable on the standard through standard financing. As I've already mentioned, we've got a factory product, standardization, and schedule certainty, which is all critical to delivering what investors need. And if we move on to the next one, then just again, a little bit of an overview of the factory fabricated solution. Again, we talked about the modules with our 3 factory types: primary modules, MEP modules and civils modules. And again, all of those modules will be road transportable and then delivered to site in our 4th site factory, which is undercover and allows us to have even greater certainty and lower risk during the construction phase. So if we go on to the next slide, please. Just to talk quickly about where we are. So Rolls-Royce SMR Limited is a newish company, obviously built on the heritage that I talked about. But we were formally launched in November of last year, and we're now moving very quickly to actually build our team and prepare to deliver the fleet, not just in the UK, but globally around the world. So as hopefully you will be aware, we have entered our generic design assessment, the UK generic design assessment process. That has now started, and we're underway and expect to complete the first stages of that within the next couple of years. We are also simultaneously undertaking the IAEA's generic reactor safety review. So that will enable us to have higher certainty that our plant will be suitable for multiple locations around the world. And then we are undertaking our verification and validation program as we speak, which will underpin the design fully. But most importantly, obviously, we're going through that licensing phase, but we are also building the business, getting ready for global deployment. So we're looking at scalable supply chains, setting up our regional hubs, preparing for our turnkey delivery, and creating the flexibility that we need in the solution to satisfy multiple markets as we go forward. So again, we're looking at this as a factory fabricated product for deployment all around the world. We're engaging with our customers at the moment, which obviously include governments and state utilities, both in the UK and around the world, but also most importantly, heavy industry, power and heat, who require power and heat, and looking at hydrogen and synthetic fuel for the transport sector as well. So looking at all of the decarbonisation needs that are around the world and engaging those customers to understand how we can deliver for them as well. And we're preparing for manufacture. So as Rolls-Royce SMR, we're not intending to employ an EPC contractor. We will manage the entirety of the manufacture construction within the Rolls-Royce SMR Limited company. And we're looking to prepare our manufacturing and engaging to select our first factory sites over the coming months. So again, we have a different approach in terms of making nuclear investable. We're looking to reduce the capex, the upfront cost, make sure the levelized cost of electricity is affordable on the market for our customers, and then deliver nuclear in a sure way to be able to deliver certainty to investors and the marketplace. So moving on to my last slide, it's just for me to say thank you very much. Again, I look forward to the questions and hearing the next talks as well. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, Sophie. That was Sophie Macfarlane-Smith from Rolls-Royce SMR. And I think next we'll go on to Mike Waite, who's from Westinghouse. And I will call him out on the fact he's wearing an on-brand polo for the reactor design that Westinghouse are looking at. So over to you, Mike.
Thank you very much, Lincoln. Yeah, if you could move on to the next slide, what I'm going to do is introduce our project and also our technology. The project is perhaps less well known, of course, than Sizewell C. The technology may be well known to some. It is good that we come after Rolls-Royce SMR and the UK EPR presented by Julia. I can explain some of the similarities and differences, and some have said that the AP1000 plant is the Goldilocks of reactors, somewhere between the EPR and the newer SMR. So if you can move on to the next slide, I'd like to explain the value proposition of what we are proposing for deployment at Wilver. So first of all, that technology, the AP1000 plant is delivering It's broken industry records and national records in terms of startup performance. It's since gone on to break operational performance records. It's also setting records for short outages, so its availability is tremendous. It's operating at the 4 units in predominantly baseload mode, but is also being operated where it benefits the grid in load follow mode. It can make chemical-free changes of up to a megawatt per second, all the way down to 150 megawatts. So, you know, when you talk about SMR being flexible, well, AP1000 is absolutely flexible as well. And it's also delivering district heat at one of the plants in Haiyang. The whole region is benefiting from district heating. So again, showing its flexibility. This is like not just a feature of SMR. As a delivery team, Westinghouse and our delivery partners Bechtel have got tremendous experience with the AP1000 plant. The plant is a completed standardized design. It's now been optimized for construction, and there are limited but well understood modifications that were agreed with ONR when we got our GDA approval. So we're actually quite a mature technology in UK space, and also have that tremendous global experience from the AP1000 fleet to bring to Wilver. I mentioned experience. Westinghouse and Bechtel are completing the construction and commissioning, you know, bringing 2 AP1000 units at the Vogel project in Georgia, USA, to completion this year. The first unit expected to load fuel in the not too distant future. There's also a tremendous number of European AP1000 plant projects that we'll be able to get tremendous synergies from as well. So for AP1000 at Wilver, we certainly think it will be the best value. That is based on data and statistics rather than just marketing projections. Similarly, we think it will be the earliest grid connection of any of the technologies currently under consideration. And an AP1000 project at Wilver would absolutely deliver a real transformational development and growth opportunity for Anglesey, for the Northwest, and for Wales. Really ticking levelling up boxes, and you know, really distributing the effort of large plant new build throughout the UK. 2 units, and we would say it was a minimum of 2 units that we plan to deliver at Wilver, would deliver enough reliable clean electricity for the whole of Wales. It would be fueled from the Springfield site in the UK and extensively utilize UK supply chain, and also actually benefit from having all those other European projects open up to UK supply chain as well for first movers there. Because our plant also is delivered very much in utilizing a modular construction philosophy, we believe that we can help develop those future AMR and SMR competencies through our construction philosophy. The safety philosophy is also very much aligned with AMR and SMR designs, with the fully passive safety systems. And the last point there will likely be highlighted next month in the first phase of the UK-US clean energy dialogue, or strategic energy dialogue rather. And this is a tremendous opportunity to forge closer links with, you know, some of our strongest strategic partners. So we can move on to the next slide. I'll move on to the financing of a Wilver project for AP1000. Of course, we're at a very, very different stage of development to Sizewell C. We intend to utilize, some of the mechanisms available to Sizewell C, but we need to start our project with other government funded mechanisms. We developed a white paper over a year ago now, which highlighted how we planned to develop an AP1000 project at Wilver. At the time, we were requesting support from government as we've developed our plans and projects. The number of government support packages which have become visible has increased and actually follow very well our aspirations for Wilver. The first support mechanism that we would see to help fund a Wilver AP1000 project is the Future Nuclear Enabling Fund. This is due to be launched as early as this week, in fact. The Prime Minister announced that it would be launched during April, so we're watching the clock there. Future Nuclear Enabling Fund is designed to remove barriers to entry for new nuclear projects, and this would help define and de-risk an AP1000 plant project to enable future investment. We also heard very recently about the Great British Nuclear Vehicle. This is a mechanism which we will be learning more about over the coming months, but we certainly think it has the capability to take a project such as the Wilver AP1000 project from that defined, somewhat de-risked post F&F stage right through to an FID. At FID, of course, we would, similar to Sizewell C, expect very much to benefit from the RAB mechanism. And indeed, back at COP26 in Glasgow late last year, the Minister Greg Hands said that RAB was very much targeted not just for Sizewell C, but also for alternate designs of large reactors. And he was particularly interested in those that embraced a greater diversity of design thought and construction technique. And we absolutely thought that this could apply to the fully passive technology solution that AP1000 represents, and the modular construction philosophy that it embraces. What I'd like to do is pause there and thank you for the opportunity to present our aspirations. There's a further slide which we may come on to in the Q&A phase, which will be coming up shortly. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Mike. And I would also encourage you, Mike referenced the Q&A. If you do have any questions, I see that Julia's already answered one, been very active and on the ball. If you do have any, put them into the Q&A box right at the bottom of the screen, and we'll put them to the speakers you want to hear from. We're now moving into perhaps the next generation 4 nuclear technologies with Chris White at U Batteries. So Chris, I will hand over to you to explain the solutions you guys are developing.
Thank you, Lincoln, and thank you, Julia, Sophie, and Mike, and thank you for having us here today. It's great to be with everyone. Can we move the slide on, please? So what is U Battery? We're right at the sort of smaller end of the spectrum here. So we're developing a product, really, an advanced modular reactor product that is capable of providing combined heat and power. It's not focused on the grid, it's focused on off-grid applications. So it's cogeneration heat and power. It will provide local, low-carbon modular energy. And it's 4 megawatts electric or 10 megawatts thermal, but it is scalable. And it will use tree-stow accident tolerant fuel. So because the fuel is inherently safe, it doesn't have any off-site implications. So could we move on, please? In terms of what it would look like, here's a schematic showing an illustration really showing what it could look like. And it's pretty small in terms of the footprint. It's 1.5 tennis courts in land mass. We believe it's capable of autonomous operation. So there is a control room at the far right-hand side, but that's really for illustrative purposes. In terms of the technology, there's nothing novel about the technology. I mean, it's a gas-cooled reactor, so it's building very much on the UK expertise of gas-cooled reactors. And if one looks at the far left, you can see the turbine, and it's just a regular gas turbine from Rolls. And then going left to right, we have the next is the actual reactor itself, number 2, and then the heat exchanger, number 3. And so you can see that it's a relatively small size. It would use enriched fuel up to 19.75%. So it uses what we call high assay LAU fuel. But as I say, it's very much in terms of land density, it's very much at the small end of the spectrum. Could we move on, please? So what would it look like? Well, here's an illustration of what it could look like in the built environment. And as you can see, it's really just an industrial shed, and it's quite deliberately designed to blend into the landscape. So in an industrial setting, it might look like any other industrial building. What you won't see, of course, as we envisage it, is there is no big emergency planning zone. There are no fence lines. It's roughly going to be a third above ground, 2/3 below ground, although it can be configured according to local needs. And we are targeting 30 years operational life with a lifetime extension, which could take it out to 60 years in total. It will be refueled every 5 years, so it's very much like a battery. You put it in and then you take it away. And we think that when we get to the kind of second or third or nth of a kind, it would be something like an 18-month construction process. And when I say construction, it really is modular assembly. So one would assemble a small number of modules at the site, and it's very much using commercial off-the-shelf components. And we like to think of it as plug-and-play technology because, as I say, you install it, and at the end of the operational life, you take it away. So you wouldn't necessarily be into the big decommissioning at a typical site. And can we move on, please? Because one of the features of the product is that it has a number of applications. The primary application in the UK is very much around decarbonising, energy industrial users, energy intensive users. So things like ceramics, chemicals, glass, steel, where there's a high requirement for, high grade heat and technologies, that can provide, the sustainable source of power and heat for that particular industrial application is very much part of, as we see it, the drive to net zero and levelling up. But it would also support off-grid communities elsewhere in the world. So if one thinks of Canada and countries like that with extractive industries, a U battery could go on and power the mining site where there's an increasing need to get heat into the mines and to take people out as the mining operations essentially move towards machines rather than people. But it can also equally provide things like off-grid agriculture in those communities and power greenhouses so people can grow food locally. And beyond that, there is a big potential, we believe, for hydrogen production. So for green hydrogen with a scalable U battery, we do see this as being very much part of the future. And also looking further out to export markets in the Gulf, things like potable water and desalination, a U battery could play a critical role there, as well as things like data centers where there's a requirement for, for secure off-grid, high quality power that is sustainable. And in that context, U battery is very much part of the, the energy independence, energy security piece we've been hearing about today and from the UK government recently. Okay, could we just move on, please? So here's an illustration of the UK foundation industries where we believe there is a big role for maybe up to 200 units, which would, as I say, support those industries and make them sustainable. I think if one thinks about, in the future, green steel or green cement, getting those products decarbonised and fit for purpose for the future will, with ESG shareholders and just consumers requiring clean products and clean energy with sustainable products, we very much see U battery having an opportunity here to support those industries in the north of England, particularly also the Midlands, and how part of that levelling up agenda, and very much part of the UK's heritage on gas reactors. And this technology was selected by the UK government. High temperature gas cooled reactors were down selected back in December last year, and there is a vision from the UK government to have a demonstrator by 2030. We think we can get a first of a kind producing heat and power by 2028. That's our target. We think it's a 3-year period for construction of first of a kind, and as I say, then moving on to something like an 18-month run rate. Okay, can we move on, please? Here's our key partners at the moment. So we've got Rolls providing the turbine, Jacobs on the engineering, Urenco providing the fuel on the enrichment side, and Cavendish supporting most recently with a mock-up. which brings me to the very final slide, if you'd like to move on. We've built one. So we have built our 2 key modules. So Bayes helped co-fund the construction of our key modules, being the heat exchanger and the reactor pressure vessel. These were built at the Cavendish factory in Weston and Leicester. They were unveiled in September last year, and it very much demonstrated on-time delivery for AMRs and what they're capable of in terms of on time, on budget, production, proof of concept. We've taken a number of key stakeholders around these, and that includes utilities, insurers, the media, as well as potential energy customers. And we think this is has been a great advertisement really for the UK and for the future of nuclear in terms of what advanced nuclear can look like. And as I say, this stands roughly about the height of a London double-decker bus or large townhouse. You have to imagine the top of this will be lower because it will be 2/3 submerged under the ground. So very much the smaller end of the spectrum, but a scalable product. So, and with that, I will draw this to a close and move on to questions. Thank you, Lincoln.
Well, thank you very much, Kristen. We now have a good, healthy chunk of time for questions now. There's one for you, Mike, which I'll get to from Gabor in the chat box, but there's a first one actually come through to Julian. I've seen you already answered one, but Sizewell C with the scale of the project is potentially a colossal opportunity for investors. And the question is, what are the key policy steps you think need to be taken to allow investors to realize those opportunities? And if those steps are taken, what is the potential timeline to a final investment decision and the opportunities for investors along the way?
So we need all of our major consents. So as I said, we're sort of 8 years into the development consent order process, and we're expecting it to finish imminently. And so we are in a good position with all of our major consents. We need all of those, and we need to have established that based on the RAB model that we're discussing with the government, we are able to raise investment grade debt. So once we have consents and an indicative rating, then we expect to be able to move forward towards financial close sometime during 2023, indicatively June.
There you go. Thank you for that. We might come back to that topic, but there's one actually for Sophie, which was, what is the importance of multiple units or a fleet deployment of the same reactor design in terms of being able to raise cheap finance?
So again, what we're talking about is a manufactured product. So we're talking about a product that's specifically designed to be repeatable and reused around the world. And of course, the cost model is based on the repeatability of the product and the use of the manufacturing base. So clearly, part of our strategy is, as we talked about, to turn this into a commodity product and a solution that can be factory fabricated, and that obviously means that we can bring the cost down as well, commensurate with that, and also take advantage of the learner curve that we see, not just in the repeatability of the delivery process, but also through the manufacturing process. Now, again, we know that very well from our heritage in Rolls-Royce in manufacturing and the benefits that you can gain from factory fabrication, but also through repeatability, and that all feeds into being able to reduce the cost and make the upfront cost investable, but also to reducing the levelized cost of electricity when you get repeatability of operation as well, and experience in operating exactly the same assets in multiple locations around the world. So again, it's a whole approach to making a product that actually becomes overall more investable.
Sure.
And Lincoln, it's the same issue for gigawatt. I mean, we need a program. Obviously, the more you build of the same thing, and the more you are able to have a fleet of operators who can operate the same reactor type, then self-evidently, the cheaper it is. And what we need is some programmatic decisions. So the government's, we've got a program for the number of gigawatts. This is great. And now we need the decisions around the creation of fleets within that program of the different technology types which the government wants to see. We would very much like to build EPR 5 and 6. Obviously, it would be cheaper than 3 and 4, which will be cheaper than 1 and 2.
And do you think, Julian, this actually is a question open to all of the panelists. What kinds of investors do you think will be drawn by, I guess, the introduction of the regulated asset-based model, which is applicable to different reactor technologies, but also who have been the most reassured, perhaps, by the scale of the commitment, the upscaling of the political commitment from the UK government in terms of how much nuclear they want to see?
Well, I think that if you look at the universe of investors in the other regulated assets in the UK, so electricity transmission, electricity distribution, water, and airports, we would hope to see a lot of those same investors coming into nuclear on the basis that the regulated asset-based model creates a similar risk profile, which those investors can fit into their core infrastructure fund. So, I mean, that's the aim, because it's that group of investors who have some of the lowest costs of capital, and that's what will result in a lower cost of electricity.
I think if I could add to that, the other group of investors that we see are also the users. So the end users of the electricity, especially the large industrial firms that absolutely need certainty of and security of their energy supply for their long-term operation. And they, for the first time, we are looking at, can they invest in the plants? And obviously bringing the overall cost of the plant down to a level that makes it investable for them means that we can unlock the door to that type of investment. So again, either individually, if their needs are such that they could use, in effect, a whole power station's worth of power, or collectively, where you look at bringing industries together to co-locate, or where they are already co-located, but around gas and coal-fired power stations, you can bring in a nuclear and actually have a ready-made set of customers, and potentially those who want to invest to get an even lower cost of electricity in the final solution. So again, a whole new range of investors potentially.
Thank you. Chris, actually, Chris, actually, I won't even ask a question. You go on and expand on that, and then Mike, I want to come to you, but Chris, go ahead.
No, thanks, Lincoln. I was just going to agree with Sophie and Julia, really. And I think when we get to the small end of the scale, we're looking at almost like asset finance, like the way aircraft leasing models work, perhaps, or even municipalities that might be able to come together because the actual purchase price is relatively small. And we think it's more like a wind turbine type, idea that you could actually package them up and sell them as a kind of turnkey product with insurance backing. And then you could even, they could be flipped on by institutional investors. So we very much see a big opportunity here for the capital markets. And I think, as Julia mentioned, the recent success with Bruce Power and the financing over there. I was just at the CNA conference in Canada, actually, and there's a lot of interest around, capital markets and financing of nuclear. So we very much feel that we're on the right journey here, and that there is, a big appetite out there for this kind of investment.
Sure. Mike, I just wanted to come to you about, Gabriel's put in a question about the previous corporate travails of Westinghouse, which I want to ask you about, but I wonder if you might say a bit about the delivery structures and delivery teams that you would apply for the kind of projects you're looking at deploying, and how that can instill confidence in investors to hold down the cost of capital.
Indeed, and I will answer that other question in the chat box shortly. So what we're planning for Wilver is to basically bring the delivery team from Vogel, Bechtel, who are currently completing the construction of the 2 units there, and Westinghouse, apply that knowledge to the Wilver project. There is a tremendous amount of knowledge that comes from Vogel. Vogel itself benefited tremendously from the 4 units previously constructed in China. There's a further 4 units that China has announced just recently, which again will all add to that sort of institutional learning and benefit from the standardization of plant and delivery plans. So, I mean, what we're bringing is not a first of a kind plant. It's very much a global fleet that'll be deployed in the UK with very, very minimal site-specific, ONR-specific modifications, and fully utilizing UK capability, of course, but bringing that global experience, some of the key critical path supply chain from those experienced global suppliers, but really maximizing the local benefit as well.
Sure. No, thank you for that, Mike. And we got a question actually, which was for Sophie, but I think it's also applicable to Chris as well, which is how many units do you have to sell or have on order to justify the first factory, or are you planning to build the factory first? So I'll go to you, Sophie. The question was for you, but Chris, wondering if you might also comment on the number of units you have to justify the modular construction, the investment in the modular construction or manufacturing process. But Sophie, to you first.
So what we need to see when we set up the factories, and we are moving ahead with the process of setting up the factories, is a pipeline of opportunities. So again, if we were only ever going to build one, of course, the logistics or the cost of it wouldn't make sense. But we don't see that that's a likely scenario. We see a really strong pipeline of opportunities coming through. Now, each set of factories can produce around 1.8 to 2 plants per year. So we're looking at a relatively high volume throughput through the factories. But again, when we look at the market, we see the opportunity is absolutely vast. The demand signal that's coming in, both to fulfill the low carbon needs, but also the energy security needs around the world, is very significant, both for governments and for industry. So again, I don't think there's anything that will stop us in terms of opportunity. Certainly, we are looking at securing our first orders in the next couple of years, and then moving forward with putting our factories in place. And clearly we have a business case that looks at exactly what is required to be able to move forward with our financial commitments. But again, at the moment, in terms of the market that we're looking at and the size of the opportunity, we don't see any concern in terms of moving ahead and starting with the construction of our factories.
Sure. Thank you. Yeah. Chris.
Yeah, just like Sophie, really, we see a very strong market. I mean, in the UK, we think there are 200 sites potentially, and perhaps in somewhere like Canada, another 300. But globally, there's a very significant market. And we won't be, constructing our own factories, but we see a supply chain in the UK that is very capable of delivering, and we're confident we can do that. I think what I would say on enabling reform, on the policy agenda, we do need kind of permitting, siting, and licensing regimes that would allow multiple rollout really of a fleet. So to get to that, you really do need to have kind of concurrence and consenting. And I know that regulators and the government do know this, and we're going to be seeing I'm pretty confident some interesting pieces coming up on that. But we need to get to a point where we can consent these power stations much more quickly, and we're very confident the UK is moving in that direction.
Sure. There's a question which came up on nuclear waste, which I'll put to you in a second, Julia, because you're the one who first voluntarily grappled with this issue. The question was how companies are engaging with investors and others on the point of what we do with the resulting waste, and conversations with RWM over the geological disposal facility. I might speak for the whole nuclear industry for a start, in that RWM is very actively and very thoroughly going through a process to identify suitable sites for geological disposal, which would take all of the waste that is currently being produced, that has been produced, that's high level, which is very small. It's a dishwasher tablet for every person in the UK. That would take all of the waste that needs disposal there from the current fleet, and that would take all of the waste from a major new build program. And what I'll say further is that all of the people you see before you, they will have to put aside funded decommissioning streams to pay for the disposal of nuclear waste. Nuclear is the only industry that tracks, manages, and pays for its own waste and knows what to do with it. All of the spent fuel will be stored on site for the duration of the operation of these reactors, which will be 60 years from the point of opening. So we have decades to work and get GDF just right. But over to you, Julia, on how you engage with investors and to put the issue in perspective and reassure them on the question of waste disposal.
Well, the first thing we do is take people to see the Sizewell B waste store, touch the canisters, as I said earlier, explain how much of the UK's electricity has resulted in that volume of waste, and that's very reassuring. You don't have to wear funny clothes, you don't get a dose, you can go and hug the canisters should you wish to do so. And that's very effective, it's very calming for people, because as I said, they have sort of Simpsons-esque notions of what the waste is like, and it's very calming for them to see it in those canisters. Then we explain that we have a safety case for the waste to stay in situ for at least 100 years, and we would expect to be able to make that safety case in the future for more hundreds of years if that's what was necessary, and indeed if that's what turned out to be desirable, because it is a small volumetric problem and the waste is safe where it is. That's not so. Obviously, we currently have a policy, the UK has a policy of that waste going into the GDF. But from an investor's point of view, the cost of putting the waste into the GDF was resolved through a policy decision about which sets a cost for new build projects. Some might think that the cost charged for new build projects was an effective subsidy of the legacy waste, and it's at least 6 times the cost of the expected cost of disposal, but it's fixed. So it's capped. So from an investor perspective, at the end of the operating life of the plant, having built up the hypothecated cash fund, which, as Lincoln said, is the only industry which builds up a hypothecated cash fund to deal with its byproduct, unlike, for example, the carbon in the atmosphere, the investors, having built up this cash fund, hand the cash fund over to the Nuclear Decommissioning Authority, and I stress that it's expected to be considerably in excess of the expected cost of decommissioning. Decommissioning of new and of waste storage and disposal. Decommissioning of new nuclear reactors is not like the decommissioning of the old fleet. The UKPR is designed to be decommissioned. It's very well understood. Every part is named, labelled, characterised, and there's a very, very well understood process to decommission. And as I say, the most calming thing for people in the UK to look at waste is to go to the Sizewell B waste store. We'll probably, for the more interested investors, also ask our colleagues in Olkiluoto to arrange for people to go and see the Oncarlo waste store. So again, people can see that there is a technical solution. Somebody is building or has built a waste store.
Thank you very much, Julia, for that excellent answer. I know the other ones you'd have views on this, but given we only have a minute left, I just wanted to quickly address this last question, which was, do we believe the recent energy strategy announcements will make the UK an attractive target market for more overseas OEMs and supply chain, which potentially adds complexity in managing and funding the UK program? Mike, I might go to you for that for a brief, maybe 30 seconds, then Sophie and Chris, if you want to, and Julia, if you want to briefly pitch in before we close. But to Mike, first to you on that question.
Thank you, Lincoln. I certainly think it has the potential to. What we need to see now is the strategy, the words put into action. We're starting to see some visibility of some of the processes, mechanisms being put in place to actually drive this tremendous growth that is wanted. But it's more details. What does Great British Nuclear Vehicle scope look like? What does the Future Nuclear Enabling Fund intend to deliver? So yeah, detail of how we're actually going to deploy these initiatives.
Sophie, I don't know if you want to make a closing comment on that, or Chris.
So the only thing I would say, Mike is absolutely right in that we need the detail to understand exactly what's going to happen, and we need the action to follow from the words, definitely. But the one thing that the UK policy and the release of the energy strategy has done, or the security strategy, is to actually show the world that the UK government is really strongly behind nuclear and pushing forward with its nuclear programme. And that's a great signal to send out to the rest of the world, that this is a very strong government with good credibility who's pushing forward with this. And that enables to get the best in the UK, but also helps us in terms of how we're looking to deploy overseas as well. So I think it's a really good step forward for the UK government.
Sure. On that good, awesome. Oh, so Chris, go on. No, I'll give you 20 seconds, Chris.
I'm going to agree with that actually, and you've actually been focused with Canadian partners for a long time in terms of the supply chain. But this is all very good, I think, for FDI into the UK, and really makes a set there, I think, for a very rapid now, deployment from financial capital.
Sure. No, on that optimistic note, then I think we will close there. Thank you very much to Julia, to Sophie, to Mike, and to Chris for their contributions today, and to all of you for coming along and listening, and for your excellent questions along to us. As we said earlier, this will be recorded, so if you want to pass along to colleagues so they can catch up on it as well, please do. And then thank you as well to our partners at Green Infrastructure Week. And if you do want to see more Green Infrastructure Week events, go to greeninfrastructureweek.com and you can see more about all the vital innovations and technologies that need to be invested in to make this clean energy transition a success. But never forget that nuclear is absolutely essential to that. But anyways, thank you very much for your time, and we'll leave it there. Have a good rest of the day.
Thank you. Bye all.
Thank you. Bye.